Yes, and that's a big key with core transformation is that we accept all parts,
Hmm.
including the ones that might run some kind of a pattern that makes the process more difficult,
Hmm.
like, trying to overanalyze things or things like that. And so then what I might say is, for this process, what actually works great is if you let the logical part of your mind just take a vacation
Right.
for a while, just because it's earned a vacation, don't you think?
So thanks for the opportunity. It's great meeting you, Tamara.
Oh,
Just gonna do a small introduction for the people who don't know you. So you're an internationally recognized transformational seminar leader, a personal transformation coach, and the co-author of the seminal book Core Transformation: Reaching the Wellspring Within, along with Conny Andreas. You're a lead trainer and developer for the Core Transformation model, and over 3 decades you've gone all over the world training this model. Lots of people know about it because of you. You're also regarded for your heartfelt, gentle training style and your mastery of the material. You create a safe and clean environment that allows individuals to explore their own deep transformations. And in addition to core transformations, you authored a micro book, if I'm correct, called Change Without Struggle.
mhm.
And you designed several trainings on how to apply like core transformations and other related stuff to physical health and healing, correct?
Yes,
Great.
yeah.
So my first question would be, could you share a little bit to people watching this about your personal history and what drew you first to the world of personal transformation?
Okay, so yeah. So my first introduction to any of this was when I was in high school. And at that time, my older sister, Connie Ray, and her boyfriend at that time, Steve,
Mhm.
found NLP and they were very excited about it. And so they came home at Christmas time. And so it's like we all got an extra Christmas present that year. And they were just sharing what they had learned. And so I was really excited about it when there I was, probably, what, 15 years old or something like that. Um, and so, initially I was just interested because it's interesting and, interested for myself personally and, it was just exciting. But then later on, I ended up getting a master's in music and the
Mhm.
whole time kind of keeping track of what was happening with NLP. And then finally I just said, okay, this is really what I'm more interested in. So I'm gonna, go into it at that point.
But basically shaped your path with this, like, let's call it a coincidence that they came with it on that Christmas. What would you consider the most inspiring thing that got you into this more? Like, was it the personal change that you did on yourself, what you saw it doing on others? What was the thing?
So, yeah, so when I was in high school, what got me interested was that we could actually discover how people think,
Hmm.
and so it kind of gave us a window, gave me a window into understanding how I think as well as how other people think. And then of course making changes in that. And even when I was like a junior in high school, I did the NLP phobia process with a friend of mine who was just going to go to choir tour in Europe and
Hmm.
where she'd be on a lot of trains and she had a phobia of trains. And so I did this process with her from the manuscript of the Frogs into Princes book. It hadn't even been published yet, and it worked. So, so if I as a kid, could do this just by reading the manuscript of a book and it works, it's got to be pretty powerful stuff. So in terms of getting me hooked on NLP in general, I'd say that's what it was.
That's a pretty good convincer. And I think you had access to the early manuscripts because many of the books were edited by Steve and Conny Ray, and many of the video programs. I remember seeing Conny Ray on many of the beginnings of the videos that Richard Bandler, I think, used to do back in the day. So, from the foundations of NLP, how did the core transformation process evolve?
Yeah. So, well, do you want the Connie Ray story of how it evolved, or do you want my story of how I kind of came into it? They're both,
Um,
I think Connie Ray's story is pretty interesting.
Go for it.
I have to say, so so first of all, and I'm going to just this is off the top of my head here, and I'm going to give the brief version, but
Hmm.
she was inspired by an experience that she had with Milton Erickson. And
Hmm.
your audience probably all knows who that was. He was just like a world famous hypnotherapist. And so anyway, late in his life, he spent basically all of his professional time working with small groups of professionals who came to him to learn, and they would end up going into trance a lot and things like that. I understand. I didn't get to do that. That was before my time, um, but anyway, so Connie Ray had an opportunity to go see Milton Erickson. I think this was her second time to see Milton Erickson, and she had a major personal issue going on for her at that time, which is she needed to decide whether to stay with Steve or not. And so anyway, long story short, so she asked Milton Erickson, "Could I have a personal session with you?" And he said, "Yes." And then he turned to talk to somebody else. And so he didn't set anything up or, say anything about how this is going to happen. So anyway, then it didn't happen basically. And then finally on the fifth of 5 days that she was going to be there, Connie just gave up on having a personal session and was just paying attention to what was Milton Erickson doing and how was he responding to people and wanted to learn everything she could. Then all of a sudden, she just seemingly out of the blue felt like a completely different person.
Nice.
And that doesn't mean she became somebody else, of course, but she just felt this different sense of herself than she had ever experienced before. And just at that moment, Milton Erickson looked at her and said, "And your unconscious has made an important decision." So anyway,
That,
so she still didn't know, what the decision was at that time, but what she felt was a shift towards a sense of inner clarity and presence and inner well-being. She felt as though she would be okay, no matter what direction she went. And so, so from that point, and of course, she doesn't know what Milton Erickson did to evoke this experience in her, because he didn't just give you a handout and say, here are the steps, right? Um, so anyway, she went home, and this sense of clarity and inner well-being and a sense that everything's really going to be okay lasted for some time, but then it began, like, I think, 6 weeks, a couple of months. After some time, it started to fade. And she
mhm.
really wanted to get it back, of
Okay.
course. And
Mhm.
so she tried everything to try to get it back, and she couldn't. And she arranged to see Milton Erickson again, but he died right before she was able to see him. And so yeah, so then sometime later, I think it's about 10 years later or something like that, she was working with advanced language patterns and had a bunch of clients come to her, and they had to bring to her whatever their worst life issue was that they tried everything else and nothing had worked on it. Something like that. She set it up in some kind of way so that she'd get something really juicy to work with. And and then she was just kind of go for it, change, do whatever she could using language patterns to get a change. And from the first of these sessions, core transformation was born. So basically, it came from Connie Ray's unconscious,
Mhm.
and it was she thinks inspired by the experience that she had had, years earlier with Milton Erickson. And so even though she doesn't think that what Milton Erickson was doing was the same process, but it gave her an experience that she was always kind of wanting again and looking for ways to get. And so she thinks that unconsciously this led her to the core transformation process, along with, of course, all of her NLP skills and developer NLP developer skills and all of that obviously came into play as well.
And what about you? How did you enter into that?
Well, so back in that time, I was living in Ohio in the United States, a different
Mhm.
state from where Connie Ray was living. She was in Colorado.
Way from Colorado.
Yeah, quite a long ways, yes. And at that time, I was already an NLP trainer, and I also, along with a partner, had a training institute.
Mhm.
And we brought Connie Ray in to train part of our master practitioner training.
All right.
And so what she did, she said, Wherever I'm going right now, no matter what I was supposed to teach, I'm teaching this." Because she had just developed core transformation. And so that was the new material that she wanted to share with the world. And
All right.
so what I noticed was that, I was, of course, going around watching people doing the exercise, helping them if they needed help. And what I noticed was that in addition to changing thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, like I was used to this happening in NLP, of course, but in
Mhm.
addition to that, people were accessing these states of inner peace or oneness or love or, sense of beingness, presence. And it wasn't just a word, you could see a shift.
Mhm.
That's one thing NLP people can do is notice nonverbally, signs that people have really shifted their inner state. And and so this was new to me. Reaching these kinds of profound states, I had not seen with any other kind of NLP work. And so that got me really interested in it. And actually, I consider both of these results to be at least, probably equally valid and useful. Changing our behaviors and thoughts and feelings, of course, is still useful. And reaching this profound sense of inner well-being, we could say, it might even be more useful actually in the bigger picture, and to have this more and more in an ongoing way.
Okay. And is this where the tagline came in, which is reaching the wellspring within, which is actually accessing these core states that people get to, right?
Yes, yes, that's what it's referring to is these core states that, these kinds of core states, of course, people talk about them from other kinds of experiences. They can happen spontaneously. Maybe somebody's walking in nature, or, some people get them through meditation if they're really good at it. However, reaching a core state reliably through our problems, through an inner part of us that has been causing some kind of a difficulty for us. This is, so far as we know, core transformation is the only thing that can do this, and then use that to transform the issue.
Amazing. So if you want to like not summarize, but to give it in a nutshell, so what is core transformation in its essence?
Okay, so yeah, it's a gentle inner process
Hmm.
for changing these behaviors, feelings, and patterns of thinking that we don't like.
Hmm.
The process itself feels like we're being kind to ourselves. And yeah, and so basically what we do is we go inside, we put ourselves into the situation of whatever it is we want to change. So, like, if I were to change eating a specific food that I don't want to eat, that's not healthy or whatever, so I put myself into the situation where this is happening. So, like, out there's a bag of potato chips or whatever, or if I want to change my reaction to when my children or my spouse does something I don't like, I'll put myself in and imagine that there they are doing that pushes my buttons,
Hmm.
so we access the experience that we don't like, that we want to change, and then we consider that, we didn't consciously generate this. Whatever it is we want to change, if we were consciously doing this, we'd be able to change it just by deciding not to, right?
Exactly. Hmm.
So, so it's therefore an unconscious part of us that's generating this experience we want to change. And so we begin to notice this inner part of us, the unconscious part of us that has been generating whatever the response is, or the behavior is, or the kind of pattern of thinking is that we want to change. And
Okay.
then we communicate with that inner part and guide this inner part to the core state and beyond. Yeah.
Amazing. So since you mentioned part,
Mhm.
this is what we identify. Could you explain what we mean by part and why is this such a compassionate starting point?
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for that question. So we say in our language a lot, at least in English. I guess not all languages have this same expression, but we often say, there's a part of me that wants to change my career, but there's a part of me that wants to stay with what I have. Or in this meeting, I find myself just getting so built up full of steam, even though what I really want is to be relaxed and calm. Or,
Mhm.
I still feel hurt about something that happened years ago, even though I really want to be over it, right? So we use this kind of talking that, language in our way of describing our experience all the time. And so in this kind of situation, like if I say, well, there's this part of me that gets me to eat sweets, even though I know it's not healthy for me, I don't want to do it, then it's not
Mhm.
all of me that is generating this behavior. It's just this part of me. And so that really helps us to tap into the right URL inside, we could say, the right address. We're getting
I
to
love
the source of the problem, the source of what we want to change. And then you asked how it's compassionate, and how that is that we know that this inner part of us, even if it's causing some kind of problem, it's it has a positive intended purpose. It's trying to do something positive. And so we can discover that and find out what it is so that we can discover how this part is actually, on a deeper level, an ally. These parts, they were not put into us, or we didn't develop these parts to,
it.
to create a problem. They were all created as an attempted solution to something. They're trying to do something positive. And so by exploring what that is, that's kind of like the first few steps of the process.
Amazing. So many people watching this may be familiar with other what can be considered as parts,
Hmm. Hmm.
just well-known models. So there's, for example, the internal family systems, or
Hmm.
maybe the NLP classic parts integration. So how does CT differ in the approach and philosophy from these two? I'm sure there's others, but let's stick to these two.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so it's easier to say how it relates to the other NLP parts methods because I learned those before I learned core transformation. And
Right.
so yeah, and there, all of these parts work methods that you've mentioned, people are getting benefits from them. They're
Definitely.
all valid in their own way. So as far as the NLP ones go, so the the parts integration method, there's two main ways that it's different. So one way is that when we're doing that method, we don't necessarily get to a core state.
True.
Some people might some of the time, but it's not consistent and reliable. And there are reasons for that.
All right.
So we use a little bit different language and we have a little bit different of a goal for what we're going for. And so that's the first thing. And then because with core transformation, we do get to a core state, then that becomes it's very powerfully transformative.
Mhm.
So we can really heal these parts with the core state. Whereas with parts integration, the goal is to integrate the parts with each other. So now we have a new part that is more integrated than what we had before.
Mhm.
With core transformation, because the part gets to a core state, then at a later phase of the process, we can actually integrate it with our wholeness. So, so it's not just integrating with another part, and they still have a part out there, it integrates with our wholeness. So then over time, I can become more and more of a whole person rather than being a collection of parts.
So would you say here, like in the traditional parts integration, we're
Mhm.
challenging the part to see what's similar to the other part that's it's in conflict with, while in CT, we're more seeing what does this really part really need, and we
Mhm.
connect
Mhm.
with it. And instead of just connecting it with another part, we're just allowing it to uh, be part of the complete whole that we are.
Yes. And with core transformation, well, sometimes we do work with two parts that are kind of polar opposites. We
Mhm.
do that sometimes. However, sometimes we get a powerful shift and all that we need just from working with one part.
Nice.
So whereas with parts integration, we have to work with, at least two parts. Usually it's two
Definitely.
parts in order to
They're
get the result that
contradictory
it's.
usually.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
in
exactly.
transformations, once we work with two parts, they might be coexisting but not contradictory, if I'm correct.
Well, with core transformation, usually how it goes is we work with one part first and then that is integrated.
Mm-hmm.
So then if we have another part left to work with, we also work with this one and then it is also integrated. So we're left with a fuller sense of our wholeness. And of course, everything of value that had been contained within those smaller parts is preserved and is now available to the whole. So I
Yeah.
can now make choices as a whole being rather than kind of a committee of parts. So that's how it relates to other NLP parts methods. And
Mm-hmm.
as far as IFS goes, they have a little different philosophy, as I understand it. I'm not an expert on that, but as I understand it, they do not really believe that parts can integrate. So they
Okay.
believe that we're born with all of our parts. You know, all the parts we ever have, we're born with them and we'll always have them. And so the best we can do is to help them get along better and help them have a better experience. But what we're always going to be a committee of all these many parts. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
with core transformation, the model is a little different. It's that we're born as a whole consciousness
Mm-hmm.
over time, in response to challenging situations, we kind of split off a part of us to run some kind of a coping mechanism.
Right.
And then through core transformation, it's possible to heal this part at a very deep level, and then it's able to integrate. Whereas with most methods, you really wouldn't be able to integrate a part, not
Mm-hmm.
fully, because most methods don't deeply heal each part, and that's kind of a prerequisite.
Okay. So if I were to say like IFS is more of a systematic to understand the parts and maybe to know why we act the way that we act. The traditional NLP parts integration, it's more when we have an internal conflict just to make it easier for us to deal with it and just to integrate only these two parts.
Hmm.
Whereas in core transformations, we're working more on being compassionate with this part, understanding it, and just allowing it to exist in its own way, but why is it existing? Why did we create it? And where did it come from to begin with? If I'm correct.
Yeah, you're on the right track there. I would say though that with like for example IFS, there's a big focus on understanding, and also on, as I understand it, not being an expert, on
Yes.
helping these inner parts get along better, so that
Hmm.
they're not fighting with each other, hopefully. Whereas with core transformation, we don't need very much understanding.
Okay.
So the goal is transformation. And so we don't need, usually, occasionally there's a part that does want to just express itself for a while before it's ready to do anything else. But that's really rare. That's really
Okay.
rare, especially once the unconscious gets the idea that we can actually help this part get what it wants. And
Hmm.
then, go directly for that. And so then that's what we do is help the part get what it wants at the deepest level. And that transforms it. It heals it from the very deepest level. It's like now it's able to be its true inner essence, which
Hmm.
it had lost touch with, years and years ago.
Hmm. Okay. Nice. Very interesting. So one central element of CT is the outcome chain.
Hmm.
Can you walk us through what that is and just how does it help us to discover the positive intentions behind our unwanted behaviors, feelings, or thoughts?
Yeah. Yeah, sure. In fact, how about if I just give you an example of this is one that I often share. It's one of the first times I did core transformation with myself. And at that time, if you had asked me, what's your worst issue? I probably would have said that I felt shy. I felt this sense of shyness. And
Mhm.
that doesn't mean that I was a recluse and stayed at home all the time. I was actually already an NLP trainer. But when I was especially with groups of people, I didn't just feel relaxed and free to just be myself.
Right.
I felt, just I felt like I was kind of pulled back or kind of sense of tension inside. Um, so as I was doing the process then, first I stepped into this situation. So I see this crowd of people all around and notice the experience. And so first, what I got was an image of a wall around myself. And so
Hmm.
these inner parts can communicate with us with pictures with sounds or words or with feelings. So, yeah, so I got this. I thanked the part for being there because I know it wants something positive. And I asked the
Mhm.
part, what do you want? And the answer was protection, safety. So,
Okay.
and I could already recognize, of course, that's something positive, something that has value. Although, I didn't necessarily agree that it was necessary to have a wall around myself to be safe, but I could recognize that this is something positive.
Mhm.
So then I invited the part to step into what it's like to already have that. What if it already has protection and safety just the way that it wants? And
Mhm.
then I asked the part, when you have this, what do you want through this that's even deeper, even more important?
Mhm.
And this time the answer I got was to relax.
Right.
And now the answer I'm getting is really more of a feeling. And
So
then,
can I interrupt here? So once these are coming out, does it
mhm.
matter if they're negative or positive or whatever comes out is whatever's coming out?
Yes, whatever comes out is what's coming out. When you say negative, you mean something that the person wouldn't consider to be something good,
Yeah. So for example,
like
say
revenge or something.
not to fail. I don't want to fail.
Oh,
Uh,
to not fail, something stated in the negative.
for example.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So if with a lot of NLP,
Mhm.
if you get something that's stated in the negative, you have to ask follow-up questions to turn it into the positive. With core transformation, we don't need to do that. It will automatically turn into something stated in the positive as we go along.
Mhm.
So if the part says, I want to not fail, then we can just, even though this doesn't make any sense logically, we can invite the part to step into what it would be like to not fail just the way
Mhm.
that it wants. We don't know what that means, but there's something that the part wants there. And so then we can ask the part, and through not failing, what do you want that's even deeper or more important? And the answer might be, for example, it might be to be safe. It might
Mhm.
be to succeed. It might be to get a result in the world. It might be to preserve a relationship or so there's all sorts of things that it could want. And usually within one, possibly two levels, it will automatically and easily flip over to something stated in the positive.
And even as you mentioned, like a revenge or to feed my hate, let's say somebody has a
Mhm.
part that always wants to be the best, they might say to get revenge from others or to feed. So
Mhm.
that's also that applies the same way. So whatever the past gives us, we take it
Yeah.
as is and we move to the next level.
Right. Whatever, even if it's something that we don't consider positive, like to get revenge, we can just. Now, sometimes the client, the person being guided, might need a little bit of framing on this. It's like, why am I thanking the part for this response? I don't like it, at all. So we might need to just let the client know that, that that's okay. We can recognize that this is not something that's probably going to work well for you in the world, in life. However, the part doesn't just want revenge, it wants something through this. And
Hmm.
by following the process, we'll get to something that you'll agree is something that has value.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
So in the book, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. So anyway, with my example, if you want to know what's
Yeah,
beyond
please.
that, so it was like shyness. The part wanted protection or and safety. Through that, it wanted to relax, to feel comfortable. Through that, it wanted inner peace, and that's starting to sound like it could be what we call a core state.
Hmm.
However, checking that wasn't the last thing. So through that, it wanted a sense of being. Actually,
Mm.
it didn't give me that word though. I just got a feeling of it. And, it's just a sense I could have called it a sense of my own essence or aliveness, but the word that I gave it was being that seemed to fit it the best. And that then was the core state. That was the resource that transformed that whole outcome chain.
And very interesting. Okay. So in the book, there's a clear distinction between CT and other methods like positive thinking or deep
Hmm.
analysis. So how
Hmm.
does he manage to bypass willpower and intellectual understanding to create the change from the inside out?
Okay, yeah. And those are two different things, and that's a really important question. So I'll start with intellectual understanding because that is there's just such a widespread belief that if only we can understand our problems well enough, then we'll be fine. If we just have enough understanding, then that's going to change our life somehow, right?
I'm just going to interrupt you for a second. Milton Erickson used to say, change will lead to insight far more often than insight will lead to change. And there's lots of focus in psychology about being more aware, whereas sometimes awareness is not equal to change or uh,
Yeah.
evolve development.
Yeah, and we say something similar. And actually, I had no idea that Milton Erickson had said that. So I don't know if we got it from him or if that's just kind of, it's just something that you'll discover one way or another. But yeah, change can lead to insights. Insights can happen along the way. However, it's a different kind of insight because the kinds of insights that people usually get when they're using, we could say, psychological methods is is insights that don't lead to change, they lead to understanding. You
Hmm.
know, it's kind of like if we let the part talk on and on, for example, well, then we're just taking the part's understanding and we're making it conscious. But we haven't really changed anything because this part doesn't know how to change either.
Hmm.
If this part knew how to heal itself, it would have already done it.
Right.
So yeah, so understanding doesn't lead to change, and this does. So that's how it's different from that kind of whole set of approaches. And then, as far as inner struggle goes, so with inner struggle, it's like there's this part that's doing something, and then we're pushing against it to try to make it stop. But that doesn't change the actual structure of this part.
Hmm.
It's just adding more effort on the inside to try to suppress it. And,
Hmm.
that part, it's not going to go anywhere. So that kind of approach is just going to take more effort over time because we're always, working against that part of ourselves. Whereas with core transformation, instead, we're welcoming this part that's been causing some kind of problem. We're welcoming this part, thanking it for being there, discovering what it really wants, and we're following this to a core state level, which is transformative. And this part, there's no resistance. We don't have to push the part because it's what the part already wants.
Hmm.
So we're helping the part get what it actually already has been wanting all along. That's not where its focus has been. The part's focus has been on something else. And
Hmm.
so we're helping it backtrack, get back to its core state, and then this is just very healing, and then it allows whatever the thing was that we wanted to change, it allows that to be naturally transformed. Because when this part is in the core state, now it's no longer limited to just this little coping mechanism that it had before. Now
Hmm.
it has access to the whole range of possible choices, possible options for how to express this core state in the world, how to behave, how to think, how to feel. So yeah, so that's how it's different.
So in the book, there are five universal states, if I'm correct, which are being, inner peace, love, okayness, and oneness. I
Hmm.
think maybe that has developed over time because the book was written back in, I think, in the 90s. I'm not sure.
Hmm.
What's the significance of these states, particularly? Are there others that evolve from that? And how do they resonate across different cultures? Because you've been all over the world doing this model.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for the question. And when we wrote that book, what we kind of like where we were coming from on that is that people love to have categories.
Right.
And so we're like, okay, how can we meet this need that people have for categories here with the core states? And
Hmm.
so these are five basic buckets, we could say, that core states can emerge in. And so like somebody might have a sense of presence. Well, that's not one of those five, but it's kind of like beingness, right? So it could kind of go in the beingness bucket, so to speak. Um, However, that said, it's not necessary actually to categorize anything. The more people have experience with core transformation, I think the less need there is to categorize it. And
Right.
yeah, and so what our teaching now on how to identify a core state is that we're getting to a state such as, and we can give these kinds of examples, love, peace, beingness, etc. We can give some examples, and it's beyond having or doing or thinking or knowing. It's beyond any kind of relationship with others. It's beyond anything going on around us, any kind of situation. It's
Mhm.
something that just is. And it's okay if it doesn't even have a word,
Mhm.
or if what comes out is kind of a made up word like isness or something like that, that's okay. And it's just like a state that just is. It's not about anything. It just is.
Right. Okay. One of the powerful ideas in the book is that our limitations, or I think what was called in
Hmm.
the book, ugliness within. I'm not sure that's if
Could
I
could be. I don't remember
yeah.
that, but it could be.
So they may be doorways to our core states. So even the parts about ourselves that we don't like. So this might be counterintuitive to lots of people because they tend to want to change these parts. They want to do
Hmm.
something about them,
Hmm.
maybe suppress them even more. So can you expand a little bit about the idea of welcoming our most difficult parts?
Yeah. Okay. So, like, what would be an example of a part that you'd consider a most difficult kind of part?
So some people might say they have this feeling of this experience of ugliness, let's say. Let's take
Okay.
external beauty. So they would say, I feel that part of me feels that I'm ugly, for example.
Okay. So there's a part that feels like I am ugly, right? All right. So I'll just like role play this right now.
Hmm.
So if there's a part of me that feels like I am ugly, then okay, then I notice where it is. So let's say as I'm role playing, it's like right here. So I
Hmm.
ask this part, what do you want? And what I'm getting is I want to avoid being seen.
Right.
And then I ask this part, invite the part to step into this and ask, what do you want through this? And then what I get is I want to be okay.
Okay.
All right. So now this, of course, I'm just kind of making it up. I mean, this is what I'm really getting, but I am kind of making up the issue. Um,
Hmm.
but this kind of thing is what happens though, for real, when we're working with parts that the people really don't like. They consider it their worst part. It always wants something positive, even if logically we might say, so what does thinking I'm ugly have to do with being okay? We might think to
Right.
ourselves that, there's no logical connection between those two, and that's the thing, these inner parts of us that are creating behaviors that we don't like, they are acting out of some, we could say there's, some kind of limiting belief structure there, but we
Hmm.
don't even need to, with core transformation, we don't even need to find out what is the limiting belief, you know, because the whole thing will be transformed by doing
Right.
the process.
Right. And is there a way that you go about for people who are too logical, who come to the process and want things that are very specific, very categorized, but find themselves like experiencing something that's more, let's frame it as spiritual or just connecting with the here and now, with the wholeness of things? How do
Mm-hmm.
you deal with people who are too logical?
Okay, so there might be a different approaches depending on the person. So I'll want to, and I might need to try several things to find out what resonates with them.
Right.
So where I might start is to say, so you come to me as a very logical person. I consider you to be a very intelligent person, and
Hmm.
you have you have gotten a lot of success in life through figuring things out logically, right?
Hmm.
And so I'll just want to acknowledge the value of logic. And that's true. One thing in my work, and what we recommend with core transformation is that we stay in the realm of what's true. We don't try to, do anything tricky or whatever just to try to persuade somebody, and we don't have to. You know,
Hmm.
so it's true that logic can lead to some many good places.
Hmm.
Logic has gotten us a lot in this world. Okay, so then I can say now, with this issue that you want to change, has logic solved it? Has
Right.
has just being logical about this, has this managed to change what needs to be changed? And they'll probably acknowledge that no, it hasn't. And so then we can say that so with certain kinds of logic is really great for some things. However, for this kind of thing, actually, there's a completely different approach that works better. And because your logical mind did not create this problem, right?
You're kind of accepting the part of being logic and
Hmm.
welcome the other
Yes.
part, which is the problematic part that they haven't found a solution with logically,
Hmm.
to be
Hmm.
also understood, accepted, and connecting with the core state.
Yes, and that's a big key with core transformation is that we accept all parts,
Hmm.
including ones that might run some kind of a pattern that makes the process more difficult,
Hmm.
like, trying to overanalyze things or things like that. And so then what I might say is, for this process, what actually works great is if you let the logical part of your mind just take a vacation
Right.
for a while, just because it's earned a vacation, don't you think?
I like that.
And just
Can I
kind
use
of
this? It's really,
relax. What was that?
can I use that? I really liked it. It's really
Oh
cool.
yeah, definitely, yeah. So yeah, because it definitely it's earned a break, and they might be kind of laughing with me a little bit here if they can recognize that, yeah, they some people can recognize that they are a little bit over analytical, and so and then others don't, but either way it's fine. And so yeah, just let go of that. And for this, what works better is to just explore inside and notice what happens without
Mhm.
any kind of idea of what would be logical. Just
Yeah.
notice what happens, and then we'll go with that.
Yeah. And unfortunately, for a lot of people who are hyper logical, they might go and do psychoanalysis or a CBT, which makes them even
Mm.
more hyper logical and they get stuck into a loop. Although these approaches may be very useful for some people, but for the very logical people, it keeps them going the same route. So my next question would be one of the most profound steps is the reversing the outcome chain. So once we get to
Mhm.
the core state and then
Mhm.
we come back to the beginning, what's
Mhm.
happening during this step and how does it create lasting change?
Yeah. So, yes. So basically, this part has been having this structure, this belief, although even if it was not entirely aware of it, but that this outcome chain, doing this in order to get this, in order to accomplish this, etc.,
Mhm.
will get to the core state. So it's thinking of the core state as being the goal, the end point.
All right.
But that approach just, so first of all, we invite this part to recognize that that just doesn't work very well.
Mhm.
To try to reach a core state such as this oneness, once the part's already in the state of oneness, through doing things or getting things, that usually doesn't actually result in having a whole lot of this, peaceful state, whatever it is. What does work, though, the good news is that once you step into it,
Mhm.
then you can just have this. So this becomes the starting point. So you can just have this core state now as an ongoing way of being. And that is what makes everything different. And then as we're doing this phase, we break it down and do it step by step, But that's the basic concept here is that the core state now that the part has stepped into it, this can be an ongoing way of being. And
Mhm.
then from that, when the part is already in this incredible state of beingness or oneness, it's like things that had been kind of it thought that it needed, it doesn't need them anymore. Things
Mhm.
that weren't really useful, but it thought it had to have, it doesn't actually have to have that anymore. And at the same time, things that were already important that are congruent with the core state, like honoring our relationships with other people, for example, that's still going to be important.
Mhm.
So then everything about the outcome chain will change. Some things will be enhanced. Like if in the outcome chain, one thing that it wanted was to feel good about myself. Well, when this part is in the core state, it's going to be even better, an even better experience, and just kind of automatic to feel good about myself. And yeah, so the outcome chain, each step along the way will change in different ways as is appropriate with the core state already there.
Amazing. So going more on to the real world impact of the work,
Mhm.
I think in the book there's a story about somebody who had an issue with authority and they stopped smoking as an unexpected bonus after
Mhm.
working with that. So in your experience working with people and doing the trainings, um, is it usually something that happens that there are additional benefits other than the presenting problem when working with people using core transformations?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I would say it happens often, but I wouldn't count on just doing core transformation once and having a lot of other things change that I don't even work on. But it does happen fairly often that, well, as an example, one time, yeah, so there was a woman who went to the seminar and she worked on other things, and as a result, she discovered that it was possible for her to tidy up her apartment.
Nice.
So, and she had gotten all these books about how to organize your apartment and all this stuff, but she was never able to do it. Then all of a sudden, after experiencing the core transformation workshop, it's like it just started happening automatically, even though
Mhm.
she hadn't worked on it. And I can confirm this is true because this person was my roommate at the time. So, so that's a real world
Life
result.
proof you actually saw what happened, what changed.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's an example. And there are many examples like this. And so I would say it doesn't happen all the time, but it happens a lot more often than with any other method that I've ever used, with the
No.
possible exception of wholeness work.
Okay.
So, yeah. And also possibly aligning perceptual position. So there's two other methods that I've experienced this happening with.
Hmm.
But core transformation, yeah, that it does happen that way. It's like with this inner well-being already there, then would you like another example actually of this?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, so one time back when I was sponsoring seminars, trainings, and I had already started doing some core transformation trainings, I got a phone call and this woman said, "Okay, Tamara, I'm finally ready to take the practitioner training, this advanced training that,
Hmm.
that's more time and more, costs more money and all that." And she says, "And the only reason I'm able to do it is because of something that happened after I did that core transformation seminar with you." And I was like, "What?" And she said, "So after that seminar, well, she said, well, first of all, something that you might not know about me is that, even though I have a good salary, I've been living paycheck to paycheck because if I see something, I just want to spend my money. I just want to I want to buy things. That's how I used to be, is I would just spend money on these things that don't really matter to me. And so I would spend all my money and then be down to zero and then, desperate for my next paycheck. So I did not work on this issue at the training, but after the training was over, then next time I got my bank statement, I noticed, oh, I actually have a bank balance. And then, the next time, hey, my bank balance is even more. And then I realized that I wasn't doing that anymore because I have this ongoing sense of well-being. And so I don't need to just spend my money on this worthless junk just to get a temporary high, a temporary good feeling. I already have this well-being inside of me. So then she had money available for what was more important to her. Um,
Andrew Austin, the creator of Metaphors of Movement, consistently mentions in his trainings, like if you just choose something one day and you do core transformations on it, you cannot imagine after a year how much change you're going to have in your life. Every single training, I hear him recommend that. So might as well. try that.
Yeah. Yeah, we recommend people do like a 21-day practice.
Mhm.
That's a requirement for people who go to our coach certification course, for example, because, for one thing, that's how you really get the power of core transformation,
Mhm.
is doing it consistently for a period of time. It starts to build on itself. And so yeah, we've gotten a lot of good feedback from people who have done that.
Fair enough. One part of the process is called the parental timeline re-imprinting.
Mhm.
Um, how important is that? And what is this about? Is it about dealing with generational parts, inheritance, or is it something different?
Yeah, so parental timeline reimprinting. So, well, let me first say that the first four phases of core transformation are kind of the main phases that we do every time, that we're doing core transformation, at least if we have a chance to get all the way through it. We do all of that. Um,
It does take a
then,
bit of time, so it takes like an hour and a half sometimes to get through all of that
y-
in a
y-
gentle way.
Yes, yes. And sometimes it can take more than one session, to get all the way through with an issue as well, depending on if the session is more complex or
Hmm.
not. But we get to a good stopping point within, hour and a half or something, generally speaking. And people lose their stamina after an hour and a half, after maybe 2 hours at the very most. Some people an hour is better. So anyway, the first four phases of core transformation are kind of like those are the standard four phases we want to always do if we can.
Hmm.
Excuse me. Then, uh, parental timeline reimprinting we could consider to be phase five, and
Got
we don't do it every time we do core transformation, or at least most people don't.
it.
However, it's very valuable for everyone to do at least once, and probably to come back to it from time to time to do it.
Hmm.
And what it does is it helps to transform our relationship with our whole family background.
Mhm.
And
Okay.
so, you probably everybody, watching this can recognize that our childhood was very influential, in our lives. How we were raised, how our parents treated us, etc. For better or worse, it's really had a lot of influence in our lives, and probably there's at least some that's good that we got from our parents.
Sure.
Um, and so anyway, with with the parental timeline re-imprinting process, what we can do is have the experience. What if our parents were filled with our core states, with beingness, with love, with oneness, whatever it is that's our core states? What if our parents were filled with those all
Hmm.
throughout our whole lifetime, so that then we would have this experience of just easily learning this by osmosis?
Nice.
So then we have this same learning strategy that we're all born with, of learning
Mhm.
things from our parents. We can just utilize this to learn more deeply our core states. So that's phase one of it. And then phase two is we can let our parents be the way we remember them, and with our core states just coming from the inside. And that
Mhm.
is just an additional teaching that we don't have to get these core states from the outside. We can
Right.
have this full measure of core states coming from the inside, even when people around us are not in their core states or in our core states. Yeah.
So you're kind of not allowing people not to have the core state. So you can inherit it, you can start it from within, but try to experience it both ways. So what would have happened if this happened? What would have happened if this happened? And just being okay with what happened, regardless of, but by combining ourselves with that core state from the beginning.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So in phase two, where we let the parents behave the way we remember them, and the core states just coming from within us,
Hmm.
that we generally recommend doing that one quickly. So it's like I can have probably a lot of your viewers are familiar with the idea of a timeline, right? It's
Yeah.
as if our lifetime is a pathway.
Mhm.
So if I'm starting from conception, filled with my core states coming from the inside, and then my whole lifetime is in front of me, like birth and 1 year old and 2 year old, and etc., all out to the present and beyond to the future.
Mhm.
Okay, so then as I go through and my parents on my timeline are acting like I remember, so then I want to move through this relatively quickly, so I'm not stopping and dwelling on things, but moving through relatively quickly so that the unconscious can make these connections and make these
Hmm.
transformations. And then there isn't time to get stuck anywhere, you know,
Okay.
because we're moving quickly through the timeline up to the present and then also letting our core states go on into the future as well. Yeah.
Amazing.
So it's possible for somebody to do, even if they've had like a very difficult childhood. It's possible to do. Although, for some people, they might not want to do all of this on the first day that they're
Of
doing
course.
it. They might want to, some people who had like a very abusive childhood just did part of the process the first time. And then, after a while, they added another phase and they added another phase when they felt like they were ready for it. Most people, though, are just ready and wanting to do the whole thing right from the get-go, from the first time of doing it.
Hmm. One thing I've personally been curious about is that lots of people struggle with the relationship dynamics that they have. So one of the processes
Mhm.
that you teach is called aligning perceptual positions, which
Mhm.
is sometimes people adopt other positions or they talk from the other person's perspective. Uh, for example, some people who are considered people pleasers are always seeing the other person's perspective. Some people who are labeled maybe as narcissistic are always taking their first position. They're not seeing anybody else. So could you explain what this process is and how it complements core transformation, helping people find more clarity and resourcefulness in their interactions with other people?
Yeah. So first, would it be useful to just go over briefly the basic perceptual position model? Um, okay, so it like if there's an interaction with somebody else, so I'm here, the other person is out there, so I can experience it this way. So see the other person out there and I'm in my body. This is self position. We use self position instead of like first position, just to make it
Yeah.
more using normal language instead of jargon.
Mhm.
Okay, so now I could also think of that interaction from the outside. So I could go, okay, here's Tamara, there's the other person. And so now I'm observing. So we call this observer position. So I can see it from the outside and hear it from the outside. From here, I can be more objective, more
Mhm.
neutral about it. That's the goal anyway of observer position. So then I could also step into what we call other position. So the position of the other person. So I can, like, if this is an interaction with my son, so I could
Mhm.
step into my son and pretend to be him, like I am this person now, and get a sense of what this person is feeling and thinking and believing, and what this person's positive purpose is, for their behaviors, etc. So that's other position. And other position is different from thinking about the person from the outside. Like I can imagine them and think about them. But if I step in and pretend to be them, that's a
Mhm.
different experience. That's other position. Okay. So those are the three positions. Now,
Mhm.
yeah. And you mentioned like there are some ways that we've talked about as getting stuck because of being in one of these positions too much. Like if I'm in self position too much, then that might be, I might be arrogant or narcissistic. If I'm in
Mhm.
other position too much, then I might be too much of a people pleaser. Um, However, now here's an interesting thing. So, like if let's say somebody's codependent, right? So they have a spouse, let's say, who's alcoholic, and they are a caretaker, right? They take care of their spouse gets drunk and they just clean it up and they just, protect their spouse from the consequences of the behavior. Okay. Now, if they were really in other position, if their spouse got drunk, what would be their experience?
Right. Okay.
They'd
They
be
would be.
drunk, right? They would experience being drunk even if they hadn't had any alcohol, if they
Mhm.
were really in other position. So
Right.
so this difficulty actually isn't a result of being stuck in other position.
Mhm.
It's a result of having like a muddied experience. So a
Right.
mixed up position where like some of the other person's feeling, I bring it in. And, maybe some of the other person's point of view or inner voices, I might bring those in. So I have a mix of my own experience along with some of their experience. And it's very, very uncomfortable
Mhm.
and can drive me then to try to protect that person from the consequences of their behavior or whatever happens. Does that
So,
make sense?
yeah, so would you say here that people are projecting other people's experiences into themselves based on how they expect them to be rather than how they really are, like the alcoholics
Mm,
example. So they're
mm,
drunk, but they feel like they're needy, so they're projecting. Like I'm projecting that this person needs me.
mm.
I act towards them that way.
Yeah, and that it's a mixed position. So
Right.
they're not aligned, we could say. They're not fully in other position.
Mm-hmm.
Their experience of the other person's feelings, it might be accurate, but they're not fully in other
Mm-hmm.
position. They're partly in self position, partly in other position. It's kind of like if you have a boat and then you have the bank. And so if you have one foot on the bank and one foot in the boat, you know, it's an awkward way to be. Whereas if you can get fully on the
Mm-hmm.
bank or fully in the boat, hopefully sitting down as well, then that is more comfortable and resourceful and stable, and we can do something from there. So so when people think that they are spending too much time in self-position, for example, they actually aren't. They aren't fully in self-position.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're in some kind of a mixed position that's not aligned in self.
Right.
Or yeah, or if with observer position, whatever it is. So with aligning perceptual positions, that's kind of technical. I think it might be better to talk about what can it do for you to align our perceptual positions.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so what it can help us to do
Okay.
is to be more clean and clear about, first of all, what are our thoughts and desires and beliefs. So we can be more clear about that,
Mm-hmm.
able to express our point of view better, and able
Mm-hmm.
to be more objective and truly neutral. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
usually when people step out into observer position, it isn't fully neutral actually. So able to be
Okay.
fully neutral in observer position and able to step into other position more fully, to have more empathy and more understanding that's more likely to be true. Anytime we go into other position, there's not a guarantee that it's not going to be exactly the same as the other person's experience, but it's
Definitely.
more likely to be more true um, when we can step in more cleanly. Okay, and then as a result, for example, I was getting ready for a meeting, and I was really dreading this meeting because the other person I perceived as being very judgmental towards me and
Okay.
everybody else too, and so I'm like. And so what I did then, I did aligning perceptual positions before the meeting, and after that, I felt completely
Mm-hmm.
comfortable going in. It didn't matter to me if she was going to be judgmental or not. I was very comfortable going into the
Mm-hmm.
meeting, and it's not like I was going, this is going to be the funnest thing in the world, but but I went in comfortably and was just fine through the meeting. So that's one example. There's a client who perceived
Okay.
himself as being arrogant in a certain situation. And so we did this process just one time, and it completely changed it for him. Um, there was a client, a
Mm-hmm.
woman who, like you're saying, people pleasing, she found it difficult to say no to, especially to people she cared about. And so we did aligning perceptual positions just one time. Again, I did give her some
Mm-hmm.
homework. And then in the next session, she said, okay, well, that's different. I'm ready to do something else. So so those are examples, and pretty much any relationship issue it can help with. What probably most of your audience can recognize is that no matter what change method we're using, it's more likely
Mm-hmm.
to be effective with somebody who is more present in their body.
Mm-hmm.
If
Right.
somebody
Definitely. Sure.
Yeah, yeah. And this is something we noticed in NLP, in the very earliest days, before even there was such a thing as core transformation, that the people
Mm-hmm.
who we use the word associated, people who are more associated, we would say,
Mm-hmm.
are easy to work with, easier to get a change with. So
Of course.
now there are very few methods I've found that are very effective at helping somebody to be more present in their body.
Mm-hmm.
And of these, aligning perceptual positions is among the best, or maybe the best.
Right.
So yeah, so it helps people, it helps all of us be more present in our bodies, and especially people who are who have less of it to begin with. It helps have more of it, more being present in the body, and then that then can make it so much easier um, to experience core transformation, or for that matter, any other kind of change work that they're going to do.
Okay. Is there a way for people to learn aligning perceptual positions as a standalone, or is it just a part of core transformation?
So currently, we started on a book, but we never did get it finished. So we don't have a book available on that. So right now, the options are the foundation training, live or streaming are the options for learning that.
All right. Excellent. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
actually, just a second. There might be a demonstration of it available as a standalone thing
I think
from
there's
a
an
long
old
time ago.
video of Conny working with somebody.
Yeah, I think there might be from the earliest days of it. So yeah, I don't have that in front of me, but I think that that might be the case.
Cool. So, for those trying to guide themselves through the process, what are some of the challenges that they might face?
Through the core transformation process, you mean?
Going
Yeah.
back to, sorry about that.
Yeah. Oh, no worries at all. Yeah. So what I would recommend is, first of all, um, if you guide other people,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
then that helps you. And if you have let somebody else guide you, if you
Mm-hmm.
do that first, that will make it easier, much easier to guide yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so that said, some people can do it even just out of the book without ever having had an experience of being guided.
Nice.
And so, what I recommend is to basically read the step,
Mm-hmm.
turn inward and process it.
Mm-hmm.
Then, if there's something to write it down on the page or on a blank piece of paper.
Mm-hmm.
Then read the next step, go inside and process it. Then write down whatever there is. So do it that way at the beginning, or it's also possible to use a demonstration of the process and just kind of go along for the ride. Um, there is a there
Think
is
anybody subscribe to your newsletter gets like a demonstration every once in a while. You share some stuff on your newsletter about different topics using Theory Correct.
Yeah, and so there is a free micro book that
Mm-hmm.
that we can make available to your audience.
That's
And when you get this micro book, if you when you're getting it, if you click a certain button and pay extra just $10, it's super cheap, then you can
mm-hmm.
also get an audio guide. So that is just a recording of my voice guiding you
Mm-hmm.
through the process. So some people find that kind of thing, or some people make a recording of their own voice guiding
Mm-hmm.
themselves through the process. And so those are some different ways that can work. Then after people have experienced it successfully, let's say, they've done the process, they've reached a core state, they've transformed the experience, doing it one of those ways,
Mm-hmm.
and so they really know the steps, then it's also possible just to, do it from memory, just, guide yourself through it from memory
Mm-hmm.
and without even necessarily writing down the outcome chain. That's how I usually do it. I just trust my unconscious to remember everything if I forget something. And but I wouldn't do that. It's like your unconscious can only do what it knows how to do. And so
Exactly.
first you need to teach your unconscious the steps of it. So you need to do it in a more systematic way, using the notes or using a recording that has all the steps a number of times so that your unconscious then can know it.
I think Picasso said it best, learn the rules so you can break them like an artist. I think it was Picasso.
Oh, learn the rules so that you can break them.
Yeah, like an
Uh,
artist. I think it was Picasso or Da Vinci. I don't remember correctly. So one of the things I experimented with my limited knowledge of core transformations was applying it on elements of the metaphor and metaphors of movement on
mhm,
myself and on others,
mhm.
because the metaphor is how we project our own experience. So it can be considered as parts, or it could be considered as what is called personifications in the metaphor. And
Mhm.
both for myself and for others, it was a very transformative experience because I'm choosing a wall, for example, in the metaphor, and just by
I'm
doing
sorry, a what?
a wall,
Wall. Okay, got it.
yeah. And for somebody else I worked with, it was you know the bird that flies above people in the desert, just I don't remember the name.
Yeah, the vultures. Are you
The
talking about
vultures,
like
exactly. Yeah.
that flies around something dead? Yeah.
So that client I was working with, she had a vulture over her head. So for myself,
Mhm.
I was working with the wolf. For her, I was working with the vulture. And for both of us, the transformation there, because we see a vulture as something that's going to be more destructive for us,
Mhm.
or a wall, something that's stopping us from getting what we want. But
Mhm.
eventually, after doing the process, with the limited knowledge and experience I have with CT, it was very, very transformational. So I can imagine how much more people who actually learn the full process, and I think there's the advanced and the coach can benefit. So,
Yeah, if I could speak to that just a moment, I would recommend
mhm,
that people do the process the more simple way
mhm.
first with parts of themselves. And then once they can do that and have basically a smooth experience, then, what you're describing, I do that too, of course, and I consider that more of an advanced way to use core transformation.
So this was getting me to my next question, which is
Mhm.
what advice do you give to people who are coaches, therapists, or helpers who are interested in learning this model and incorporating it in their practice? How do they start?
Okay, great question. So we have basically three learning steps. There's
Mm-hmm.
the foundation course, and the foundation course is the focus is really on personal change. So even if somebody's a professional, that's where to start. Because then that's going to end up making you a better guide. And plus, why should our clients have all the benefits, right? So, yeah, so that's the foundation training. And now most professionals find they can already begin using core transformation in their practice after just the foundation course,
Okay.
especially with their easier clients with the simpler kinds of issues.
Mm-hmm.
Um, then the advanced course gives solutions for common problems. So, like standard solutions to common problems so that because over the decades, of course, we know what kind of issues tend to come up or what kind of difficulties people tend to often have, and so we teach all of this so that then you know where to go. If these standard kinds of things come up, and also a few other things like helping to get a good starting point. That's actually one of the trickier parts of the process because if the starting point that they have identified isn't the most productive one, then that limits the amount of benefit you can get from it.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, so the advanced course is really essential skills, I think, for anybody that wants to use core transformation with clients that are more than just the easy ones.
Got
And
it.
then there's the coach certification training, and that is for those who really want to develop, who have this goal of optimizing their skills, of having a truly professional level of skill. That's what the
Mm-hmm.
coach certification program is for. And with that, then you learn how to understand every step of core transformation. What's the structure of it? What's the goal of it? So that if you hit a difficulty or stumbling block that you've never heard of a solution for, you don't know what to do, then you can explore and find out what's going on with the client and how to work with that to adapt for the needs of the client while still staying with the core transformation process. Because otherwise, what people usually do when they have a lesser degree of skill, let's say, is if they hit a stumbling block, they'll just fall back on something else they know.
True. Yeah.
They'll say, "Oh, okay, I think I'll do this submodality process," or whatever it is that they know that they've already been well trained in. They'll just switch
Mhm.
and give up on core transformation and do something else. People who are really well trained in core transformation will find that they can successfully guide somebody through the whole process with most everyone.
Mhm.
Most everybody can actually be a good fit for core transformation. Um,
Okay.
if when you have all the skills to to meet the individual to meet the individual where they are, um, and yet stick with the process.
So the foundations, the advanced, and the coach. So
Yeah.
these three left.
Hmm.
Okay. Last couple of questions. First one is, how has the model evolved since you have co-written the book? Like from where you started to training and working with thousands of people throughout the years, how did it evolve and change?
Yeah, well, almost all of the advanced material that we teach is stuff that that I and or Connie Ray have developed over the years. So, yeah, there's one advanced format in effect that is in the book, but that's a very small part of the entire advanced curriculum.
Right.
And yeah, Mark has also contributed as well. Uh, so,
Mhm.
so basically, with the advanced material, I'm the primary author, and of course, I've drawn on input from Connie Ray and from Mark. Um, so
Excellent.
yeah.
Where do you see it going in the future? Any further developments in CT?
Well, so um, I I don't know about further development. That is something, it's not that we have this goal to develop, it's that if we encounter something where we hit a stumbling block, then
Hmm.
we want to find a solution. However, after the last 30 years, like I say, we've got solutions to most everything already,
Hmm.
I think. And of course, we continually learn and grow. However, we're not it's like right now we don't have this idea of, oh, we have to develop this out of some kind of need. Um, however, what we do want to happen is we want to reach more people with it. And so,
Hmm.
we want to do more research. There's some that has been done that turned out great, and we want to do more. We want to, establish connections with groups, with professionals, with etc., so that more people can benefit from it. That's
Hmm.
that's our major goal right now.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and for this amazing chat. And my last question would be, if people want to go and find these programs and maybe sign up and learn more, where should they go?
Thanks. So please go to andreasnlp.com, Andreas, Andreas, NLP.com. And if you go there /free, you'll find some free resources.
Amazing.
And also you can go in the training menu, you can find the whole core transformation training pathway. We schedule a foundation course a couple times a year. Right now, there's one coming up in a few weeks, but
Mhm.
there's always one coming up after, several months or less. And so, and other kinds of resources, it's all there on the website.
All right, that's great. I'll make sure to post these links in the description so people can directly access them. Thank you again for your time, and it was great chatting with you.
Thank you as well, Ronnie. I really appreciate you taking your time and helping me to reach your audience.
My pleasure.